Right now at 10, protesting against ICE's operations in Minnesota. Local demonstrators are seeking justice for those killed by federal agents.
And preventing crypto kiosk scams. The protections proposed by local lawmakers.
And setting records, the life-saving work being done by the UW Health transplant team. It's all ahead on News 3 Now at 10. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Eric Franke.
And I'm Sarah Carlson.
Demonstrators are also taking to the streets across the nation to protest the Trump administration's immigration policies.
And some stores in Minneapolis participated last week, but say they're struggling to survive because the presence of ICE is keeping customers away.
I already did it once. I cannot afford it another day. This has been my worst nightmare.
Now, the strike comes as the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division is investigating the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy. Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin condemned that announcement.
They can't just look into it themselves. They need to cooperate with local law enforcement, state prosecutors, state law enforcement, in order to have an outside agency looking at their conduct. They can't just sweep evidence under the rug.
And the Hennepin County, Minnesota Attorney's Office is still deciding whether to file state charges against the officers involved in the deaths of Preddy and also Renee Nicole Good. DOJ officials reconfirmed there is no civil rights investigation into Good's death.
The Senate is moving forward with a bipartisan spending deal to avert a partial government shutdown. Senate Democrats reached an agreement with President Trump last night to separate DHS funding from the rest of the spending measures and fund the agency for 2 weeks. The compromise hit a snag earlier today when Republican Lindsey Graham put a hold on the vote.
The clock is ticking, the nation is waiting, and the abuses of ICE must come to an end.
Hold the people accountable in ICE who may have broken the law, but stand up for those in the field trying to protect America.
The 2-week extension for the Department of Homeland Security was put in to work on new rules for federal agents involved in ICE operations. The House will still need to vote on the spending package.
Now to our first warn forecast. Of course, it's been another cold week, but Blaze, we're feeling a warm-up coming on the way.
That's right, arriving tomorrow, the 20s, and we are going to stay in the 20s all throughout next week, even climbing into those low to mid 30s. Right now, though, it seems like so far away as temperatures sit in those single digits. Air temperatures above zero, but wind chill values, as we take a live look there in Dodgeville, just slightly below zero. Now, we may still squeeze out a few flurries here and there, but for the most part, I think a lot of us to the east of Madison are going to see that light flurry activity. Everybody else to the west, we're likely going to remain quiet underneath clear to mostly clear conditions, as temperatures sit right between, I would say, 9 and 10 degrees for most of us across southern Wisconsin. Those green arrows indicating the, at times, breezy northerly winds that are keeping us just slightly below zero through a lot of our forecast area, closer to Lake Michigan, slightly warmer. So the 20s are on the way, and they arrive tomorrow. Plenty of sunshine and 20s on Saturday. Snow to end the weekend, kicking off February. Southerly winds bumping our temperatures up just a little bit warmer on Sunday into those mid-20s. We have spent 2 weeks with below normal high temperatures, and that may extend to 21 days before things are all said and done, when the 30s and normal like highs return, and if there's any more snow in the forecast in just a few minutes.
All right, thank you, Blaze. Less than a week since Alex Preddy was shot and killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis, the entire country chose today as a nationwide shutdown. Instead of work and school, residents protested against the presence of federal immigration officials in cities.
Continuing our coverage now of the protests, that included hundreds right here in Madison at the state capitol. That's where our Arman Rahman talked to the multiple different types of demonstrators. Arman?
Different organizations across the country today called for an ICE out or nationwide shutdown. No work, school, or shopping to make their message heard that they think the administration's immigration crackdown is violent and, some say, un-American.
Voices of students.
Showing up really matters, especially for the people who can't show up.
And nurses.
And I'm hoping it will translate to action and change.
And others converged into one big chorus outside the Capitol.
Even though we're freezing and we don't necessarily want to be out in the cold, but we think this is really important to do.
The nationwide shutdown called for people to walk off their jobs, classes, and more to speak up. Nurses from Madison Hospital stood in solidarity with those in Minneapolis after one of their own, Alex Preddy, was shot and killed by ICE agents barely a week ago.
I have a lot of friends from nursing school in Wisconsin who live in Minneapolis, and their community is really hurting.
RN Allie Biskowitz joined others during their workday, taking a stance she thinks should be a no-brainer for a healthcare worker.
Nursing's all about caring for the community and helping to build safer, healthier communities, and so I stand against ICE and against violence in Minneapolis and everywhere in America.
Dozens of businesses in Madison also closed their doors, joining the nationwide shutdown. Some of those who couldn't say they still donated part of their sales to different organizations part of the cause.
I would have loved to be able to fully shut down in solidarity with that and take part in that, but as a small business, it's really difficult.
It's far from the first protest against ICE in Madison, as demonstrators took to the Capitol days after Renee Good was also shot and killed by ICE, also in Minneapolis.
I think that this one definitely feels different because I feel like this is a lot more extreme.
But on Friday, these protesters say the message feels far more urgent.
The escalation of ICE coming into Wisconsin and Milwaukee, they're preparing for that threat. There will be ICE present here on the streets, and it will start to affect their everyday, their neighbors, their friends, their family.
One high schooler's sign read, "Skipping art lessons to teach you one, for the country today and the one they'll grow to inherit."
For me, it's really important as like a person of color, especially as a Latino woman who is actively being persecuted, like my friends, my family are being persecuted. I think it's really important to speak up.
And a community meeting is planned for tomorrow at the Labor Temple in Madison. Eric and Sarah.
Armand, thank you. Right now, state lawmakers are coming together to stop scams involving cryptocurrency. Scammers often pose as the government and tell victims they need to put their money into a cryptocurrency kiosk. But a new bipartisan bill would put more restrictions on transactions by putting a daily limit of $500 per transaction, making receipts mandatory and requiring an ID for every transaction.
I just think especially since COVID, this has really accelerated. And with the technology, it's only going to be getting even more tough on some of these cases.
What we have before us are common sense protections to make sure that folks who have spent decades accumulating a life savings aren't swindled out of them.
And there will be a hearing for this bill next week at the Capitol. In addition to lawmakers and AARP, law enforcement and banks are expected to support the bill.
President Trump says he is nominating former Morgan Stanley executive Kevin Warsh to lead the Federal Reserve. Warsh also served on the Federal Board of Governors from 2006 to 2011 during the global financial crisis. And more recently, he has publicly called the Fed's leadership broken and advocated for lowering interest rates, aligning with the president's criticism of current chair Jerome Powell.
Wisconsin is projected to have a $2.5 billion surplus at the end of the current biennial budget. However, the state is still spending more money than it is receiving. And this Sunday on For the Record, our political reporter Ellie LaLiberte sits down with the Wisconsin Policy Forum to break down what it means.
I think it might be kind of confusing for people to hear that we're spending more than we're taking in, but we have this huge surplus.
Yeah, if you just want to think about it, you can have a family, they've saved up money over time, right? Let's say they had both parents working, they were both making a good income, and they saved up money over time. But then one of them cuts back on their hours at work, and they still have savings, but all of a sudden their expenses are greater than their income.
And you can watch how property taxes fit into that budget surplus this Sunday at 10:30 in the morning on For the Record.
UW Health says it has completed more transplants last year than all other centers in Wisconsin combined. In total, more than 520 lives were saved through transplants, and that includes a record 67 lung transplants. Liver transplants also saw a 23% increase, driven in part by advances in organ preservation and perfusion technologies.
These are devices that a liver, once it's donated, goes right into this machine, and it can stay in this machine for 10, 12, 15 hours if it needs to. And that allows us to either bring in a patient that maybe lives further away, or if we have a delay and our OR is very busy and we need a little bit of time to get them to the OR. So that has certainly helped.
Waiting times for all organ types remain consistently shorter than national averages, including a median kidney wait time of just over 13 months, less than half the national average.
Well, today, News 3 Now and Channel 3000 held our Week of Warmth telethon to help as many Wisconsinites as possible stay warm. And in total, we raised $45,000 with matching funds to get that to $135,000. And we want to thank you, Southern Wisconsin, for donating to this cause. Next at 10, former CNN anchor Don Lemon appears in court.
And the Justice Department releases millions of pages of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. Why officials say there are extensive redactions in those documents.
And Blaze is back. The latest on that slight warm-up heading our way.
Now at 10, moving forward.
The Justice Department released a massive trove of records from its investigative files on Jeffrey Epstein.
It's part of the government's compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Reporter Erica Brown has more from Washington.
In the latest disclosure, the Justice Department released more than 3 million pages of documents, as well as tens of thousands of images and videos connected to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. Previous Epstein document releases have highlighted the late financier's connections to many high-profile men, including former President Bill Clinton and President Trump. Friday's release includes records officials said were withheld from an initial release in December.
Today's release marks the end of a very comprehensive document identification and review process to ensure transparency to the American people.
Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said the White House had no oversight of the vetting process.
They did not tell this department how to do our review, what to look for, what to redact, what to not redact.
The files include emails and legal documents and also show references to President Trump, who has never been charged with any wrongdoing. One email from 2012 discusses the possibility of Epstein going to Mar-a-Lago, the president's estate, after Christmas. The Justice Department has said the delayed release of the files was needed to review and redact sensitive information about survivors. But some lawmakers have criticized the delay and said that this latest release was not enough.
They say they collected 6 million pages, but they're only releasing 3. What happened to the other 3 million? What's in them?
A group of Epstein survivors released a joint statement Friday saying sensitive information about survivors was exposed in the latest release, calling it, quote, a betrayal of the very people this process is supposed to serve. Erica Brown, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
The Justice Department says it has to submit a final report to Congress, providing the justifications for redactions before this process is complete.
Former CNN anchor Don Lemon was arrested last night in Los Angeles. The DOJ claims he was part of a protest that disrupted a church service in St. Paul, Minnesota earlier this month. Now, Lemon has said he was not part of the protest, but was covering it as a journalist. The 2 charges he's facing are conspiracy to deprive rights and a violation of the FACE Act. That includes interfering by force of someone's First Amendment rights.
These are serious federal rights, civil rights charges, but they hinge on conduct, not speech. Prosecutors have to show probable cause that there was an actual agreement to interfere with protected rights. Reporting on events, even controversial ones, is just not enough.
Now, the demonstrators were protesting one of the church's pastors who apparently works with ICE in a separate capacity.
Emmy Award-winning actress Catherine O'Hara has died. The agency representing O'Hara said the actress passed away at her home in Los Angeles following a brief illness. O'Hara is best known for her roles in Home Alone, Beetlejuice, and Schitt's Creek. She got her start as an improv comedian back in Canada. Catherine O'Hara was 71 years old.
Now to our forecast. The temperatures here across southern Wisconsin warm up just a little bit. Blaze joins us now with our details.
That's right. We are headed into the 20s starting tomorrow, and that's where we will stay as we kick off the first full week of February. So we're going to be in the 20s, warmer than where we have been, but seasonal, not necessarily warmer than average. And if we look long term, I don't unfortunately see, depending on who you ask, a prolonged warmer than average temperature trend. But between now and I would say mid-February, we'll have 1 or 2 days here and there where temperatures will be warmer than average. Those will arrive as we head into the second half of next week. As we get closer to the weekend, though, high pressure is going to keep us quiet as we go into Saturday, partly to mostly sunny. As that high pressure system moves off to the south, our next clipper moves on in, and it falls apart as it does, bringing us that chance for snow beginning, I would say, later in the afternoon into the early evening hours Sunday, continuing overnight, dissipating as we go into the start of Monday. This is a quick clipper, so we're not likely going to get a whole lot in the way of accumulating snow, and it's going to be more of that light, fluffier snow as well. In terms of accumulations, while I do agree with the area marked by the light blues and dark blues where the heaviest snow is likely going to fall, I think these totals will probably max out at about 1 inch, maybe 2 inches at best. It's just not going to be sticking around for terribly long, and this low pressure system really does weaken as it moves over the Midwest because it is sandwiched between two very strong high pressure systems, which bring down sinking air. And low pressure systems, snow, rain, thunderstorms, they want that air to rise. So it's just going to be a little bit harder for these snow showers to get going. I wouldn't be surprised if we get an isolated 1.5 inch spot, but widespread, we're looking at probably a dusting to 1 inch at best. Temperature-wise, we're going to be in the 20s all throughout next week, kicking off the new month of February, getting closer to where we should be for this time of year. If we get into the upper 20s to low 30s by Thursday, we just have to get warmer than 27 degrees. That'll be our first warmer than average normal in about 20 or so days. That is how long we have been not only cooler than average, but experiencing cooler than average high temperatures. Over the last 2 weeks, that line has stayed below normal. But as we look ahead to the next 7 to 10 days, we start to get closer to that normal, if not slightly above average there. Not only on the 6th when we get into those low to mid 30s, but also on the 9th when we get into those upper 20s to low 30s as well. But in terms of a prolonged warmer than average temperature trend, I just don't see it in the cards. I think we're going to have to fold this one and maybe come in at a different time, play this game maybe later, because the cooler than average temperature trend really wants to hold on, and I would say it's likely going to be holding on through at least the middle of February. But again, that's not to say we won't have a warmer than average day. It's just not going to be prolonged like what we've been dealing with this seemingly never-ending cold spell. But there is some relief. 20 starting tomorrow. We'll likely stay there through all of next week.
It is Wisconsin, and it'll be February.
But I'm ready for just one more day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It looks good, though. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Rivalry week on the ice, though, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. That's cold, and hopefully warm feelings come out of it. Still to come in sports, that border battle twin bill. The Wisconsin women in their first game without their Olympians, and the men trying to snap a losing skid. Next on News 3 Now.
Sports brought to you by TDS Telecom.
These next few weeks are about as tough of a test as Wisconsin women's hockey could ever want. Not only do they play the second and third ranked teams in the country this weekend and the next, their 5 best players are all overseas playing in the Olympics. But the party goes on for the nation's top ranked team, tied at 1 apiece in the second, and Finley McCarthy, the sophomore, shoots and she scores. Take another look at that laser, but it wouldn't last. The Gophers would force overtime on their home ice and dial up a dagger. The Badgers fall in the free period. 3-2 is the final score. But surely things would be different next door, right? Right? The Wisconsin men needing a win, playing a Gopher team who hadn't won a game in almost 2 months. Early on, it looked good. Tyson Dick converts on the power play, extending his point streak to 7 straight games. But things went downhill fast, and when there's an empty net, it's not a good sign. Gophers up 3-1, make it 4. Wisconsin, wow, loses their 5th straight. 4-1 is the final. For as electrifying as Wednesday's Wisconsin men's basketball's thrilling win over Minnesota was, it was far from the biggest win at the Kohl Center that night. That honor belonged to an 8-year-old superstar from Monroe, Declan Copeland.
December of 2023, Declan was diagnosed with childhood leukemia.
Doctors found the cancer when Declan had strep throat, and thankfully, they found it early.
We've been in treatment for almost the last 2.5 years, or going on 2.5 years. We're kind of in our final stages. Things have gone pretty well, so we're very thankful for that.
But you can only imagine the toll that it took on Declan. That's where the Badgers stepped in. Partnering with the AmFam Children's Hospital, he and 11 other AmFam patients got to paint shoes Wisconsin's coaches wore during the game. Declan's design process for Badgers assistant coach Lance Randall's Snakes proved him an artist after my own heart.
I just wanted to make it cool. I wanted it to make our ribbons. I wanted it to just make it cool, make it colorful.
During the game, Declan was part of the dozen patients honored on the Kohl Center floor. An experience he described as
really fun, really cool. It's a dream. It's really cool.
a dream for the ultimate Badger fan, who at age 8 has been through more than most.
How big of a Badger fan are you?
Really big.
Are they your favorite team?
Yeah.
And Declan's dad has been with him every step of the way.
This is something we'll never forget. It's been hard the last 2.5 years, so it was an honor to get this experience.
Well, as if there wasn't already enough on his plate, Declan's dad founded the Declan Project, a year-round toy drive for kids at the AmFam Children's Hospital. And they tell me just this morning they made one of the largest toy donations the hospital has ever received. We'll be right back.
Well, a unique tradition is underway in Germany.
Hunters trying to convince a panel of judges that they have the skills to call in a red stag. Now that's just a snippet from the Hunting and Dog Trade Fair's National Stag Calling Championship. There were no animals there, folks, only those bellowing men wearing traditional hunter's garb.
And beer, as you noticed. The hunters used a variety of items to mimic the animals' calls, including glass cylinders, even snail shells, as you probably saw. The one guy looked like he was going to lose breath. The unique tradition goes back hundreds of years, initially aimed at feigning a stag's rival during the rutting season so the deer will come out.
Dortmund, Germany. Those guys look pretty thrilled to be there. Final check of the forecast, and we're ready for that exciting warm-up into the 20s.
Oh, yeah. That's right. The 20s arrive tomorrow. Plenty of sunshine. Southerly winds take on over by Sunday, and that means warmer temperatures with a little bit of snow possible there to end Sunday, going into Monday, kicking off February with a little bit of light snow, but we are flirting with the 30s as early as Wednesday. We may get there by Friday. Enjoy it, because we'll be back into the 20s by that weekend.
All right, Stephen Colbert Show's coming up next.
And our next show tomorrow morning at 5. You can always find us streaming 24/7 on Channel 3000.